Welcome, family. Let's get that audio check done real quick. Get started. We got a special guest today. The very first astrologer that has ever visited the corridors of Archaix. Pretty good guy. Very popular with so many people asking me about him. I've got him backstage right now. I want to secure my checks, do my announcements real quick, and we'll bring him in. Thank you, Nanny Puffins. Crypto Gallows. All right. So if you haven't got your tickets yet, I'm really not sure how many seats are still left, but I was told that the door isn't shut yet. Virginia Beach is later on this month. I believe it's the 28th. There's been a few people that have had real problems on that Meetup app, and that's fine. You can pay at the door as long as we know who you are beforehand. We're going to need an email or something because we have to pretty strict on seating. So let's see. Archaix TV, I know you guys noticed. We have heightened the activity. You guys have gotten several videos in the past few days. And last week, you had 12 of them dumped on you. So some of these are original Archaix videos, unedited, no ads. So some of these videos are podcasts that I did on other people's channels where they took advantage of it and they just spammed them with ads. And that really ticks people off. So I'll go in there with my software, take those videos off of YouTube, and put them on Archaix TV ad-free. So, and of course, we got 3 or 4 new videos on .tv as well. I don't really have a lot of announcements. I might be a little short of breath today, guys. I'm just doing a personal cleanse, and it comes with its compensations. So my energy level is kind of low right now, but I'm all right. I'm pushing through. But I want to introduce our guest right now. I really don't have a lot of announcements, and I don't want to delay. And he was absolutely punctual. You guys know I'm late for everything. It's like my trademark. And if my coffee's not ready, I'm going to be late for the video. But as soon as I sent him the invite link, he beat me into the studio, so I knew he was champing at the bit. All right. Glad you guys can join us. I know you like those epic drops. You have another epic drops video coming probably tomorrow, but I've got a lot of them. Huge amount of shorts all put together. You see, they seem to be the best share videos for baby phoenixes. I was going to wear my baby phoenix shirt, but because I have Anthony on, I can't. I had to wear something with stars and galaxies and Grindel Dark. A local errant. He's a musician. I play some of his music on my videos. He provided me this shirt. It's the closest thing to astronomy or astrology I even have in my whole wardrobe. So here it is. Yeah, let's get Joe in here. Astrologer Joe. Your name is Joseph P. Anthony, right?
Joseph P. Anthony. Yes, that's it. Exactly. And I call myself Astrologer Joe because my marketing team said this is kind of catchy. So let's use that. I said, all right, let's do that. Let's go with it. So, awesome. But I made up for your shirt, Jason. I've got one here with all kinds of planets and galaxies on it, just to to reference it.
And we literally have the same colors, just in different splotches.
Yep, exactly. Well, you notice the patterns in reality when you meet people. There's a reason why you meet them. There's always this synchronicity that occurs. And I've seen it all throughout my life, and it's amazing to witness it now. A thought becomes an actual reality, and it's happening faster and faster. And I know we're going to talk about all this. So it's going to be really interesting because my people have been chopping at the bit, wanting to hear this conversation. I hope I can live up to it.
Oh, you can. Listen, I'm just a good old boy from Central East Texas with an 8th grade education. That's all.
Well, I realize it's not really education that's important. It's really how you connect with others. What you experience, how you experience life, and what you're here to do. And I've discovered that my whole life, and it's been a remarkable journey. And I feel like I keep awakening every day to a greater and deeper understanding of everything. So I know you're there, and plenty of our viewers are there as well. So we're going to take them a little deeper down the rabbit hole, I think, today.
Okay. Well, I want to before you ask whatever you ask or present whatever observations, guys, this is completely unscripted. All my podcasts are unscripted. As a matter of fact, it is my chief trait when I'm a guest on people's podcasts that they do not forward me any of their itinerary. I do not want to know in advance because answers need to be pulled out of the field. I don't need to rehearse something. I don't want to rehearse anything. So this is why it's very genuine. This is why I bring my guests on 3 to 5 minutes before the show. I don't want the sense that the public. The public is smart, Joe. They're real smart. They know when something is scripted. They know when you're reading from a teleprompter. They know when you don't know your material. They know when you're not being genuine. So I try to keep that artificiality out of Archaix. And the 2 videos I've watched with you come off as very genuine, very, very genuine. And I want to apologize, not just to you per se, but to my community. But I have been very, very stringent about no cross-pollination with the Archaix material because it is bibliography based and all my data comes from old books. Therefore, most of my conclusions come from data that came from historical sources. So this is why I'm so adamant about people not associating Archaix to astrology, to tarot, to OBEs, NDEs. I'm a critic of some people who are practicing that and grifting, but I've also said over and over on my channel that I find value in that because we live in a construct, and the construct has many different ways of interpreting the data. We can see the truth from manifold perspectives. Astrology is just one of them. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with everything you just said. And I understand where you're coming from. As someone who has this vast amount of knowledge that has to be shared at this time. What I believe right now is we are witnessing a great awakening. Something is changing this world. And I'm going to get into that, and we'll talk about that as well. But
I agree.
So I've discovered what I think it is, and I absolutely want your thoughts on it because of your vast knowledge. And, we'll come to some sort of observations or conclusions of what is actually happening to us right now. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to sharing what I know and listening to what you know. Obviously, I have a lot of your books right here. I've been reading them, so I'm well versed in what you have to say. And, I've listened to maybe 200 hours of your videos. So you're definitely somebody that is worth listening to. That's why I mentioned you so many times in my community, on my my YouTube channels and so on, because I see the genuineness that's coming through your knowledge and wisdom and who you are, and so I think it's great. I think it's great that we're connecting, and our audience has the ability now to see what it's really all about.
Absolutely. So you would having the you basically have the opportunity of being the very first astrologer through the door. So I am going to be very honest with you, and I'm telling you right now, I don't know. The modern astrology isn't something that I'm familiar with, but if we were going to talk about the ancient Near Eastern Mu'al-Appen, this is something I'm very familiar with. I'm very familiar with the Venus almanacs because this is the very first astrology. But what is developed afterward is something I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And I feel so privileged to be the first astrologer here, but I don't consider myself just an astrologer, Jason. I love astrology and I use it as a tool. And it's just a way of understanding cycles and patterns. To me, it's just a way in this modern society, even though we know the calendars have been messed with and all of the, a lot of it's changed and some of it is not even accurate in the Western astrology. I remember when I started studying astrology, I noticed when I was doing consultations that these charts were off. I'm like, why is this so far off? Then I realized that we're using the Western astrology where we use tropical and we use the equinoxes, which is going to be actually off from the actual constellations. So if you use sidereal or in the Vedic astrology, they're more accurate because they're actually using the constellations. But I noticed that it's more than just astrology. And I consider myself an astrologer, but I'm more than that. I see myself as more of an intuitive, someone who's very much in tune with the cycles and understanding. And it's been like that my whole life. Ever since I was a kid, I came out of the womb asking questions. What is this world all about? I remember at a young age, I'm looking around going, where am I? What is this world about? What is this crazy family I find myself in? And I kept looking for answers, but there was this burning desire to do something. I knew I was here to do something. And I remember, some of these vivid dreams and visions that I had at a young age. So, we all have intuition. We all have psychic ability. It's a natural.
So what you just described to me is I hear a feedback. What you just described to me is exactly how I feel. I am intuitive. I'm pulling information out of the field and chronology using my calculator. This is my astrology. Using a calculator is how I find all these amazing cycles and epicycles, and I'm able to present them to people and they can verify them. So you're right. It's not the system. It's not anything that's really out there that's in the perceivable realm. It's the perceiver. It's you, and you have found a tool that allows you to use that intuition and to channel that imagination and that information from the field into something that is workable. So what you were just describing to me is exactly what I do with a calculator.
Exactly. And that's why we're on this podcast right now talking, because, everything happens for a reason. There's an amazing synchronicity that happens in our world and in our personal lives. When the time is right, if the seeker is looking for something, information, knowledge, wisdom, the future, whatever, it doesn't matter. The universe or the simulation will begin to bring it to you as long as you, like you say, put the effort in. I realized that. And so when early on, I had no interest in astrology. I mean, I didn't get into astrology until I was in my late 20s. I used to study Psychology Today. I used to read anything on human nature and development, scientific journals, whatever I could get my hands on to make sense of what I was feeling and picking up. And I used to see energy, Jason. I'm sure you were too. I mean, I remember laying down on my bed in the afternoon and I would see swirling energy and things that were just appearing out of nowhere. And I thought, maybe I'm just losing it and I'm not sure what the hell I'm seeing here. But I remember seeing all this stuff and it made no sense to me whatsoever at a young age. But now as an adult with all the, knowledge and experience that I've accumulated and things that have come to me out of nowhere, I realized, oh my God, I'm somehow a part of this and somehow I'm affecting it or creating it in some manner. And so it's everything you've described as well, So I find it so interesting. And this is my message to everyone is that, remember, you are a part of this simulation. You're a soul, you're a being, yes, but you have control over this physical avatar, this reality. And it's based on something much deeper than we could imagine. And it definitely ties into your work, Jason. And so I know we're going to talk about that. And I find it fascinating. And by the way, yes, the calculator is one way of doing it. Numerology, absolutely another way of calculating things. The planets represent symbols, patterns, cycles, and the mythologies, of course, and are used as explaining psychological urges and behaviors. That's how I see it.
Right.
And
well, this book doesn't look that old, but this is an original 1893 copy of a book that I cite. About 2 years ago, I told my community because I was shocked when I was sent the book and I'm going through it. Well, actually, my copy was a paperback reprint, and I'm going through it. And when I did that video, Joe, somebody actually sent me in the mail the original 1893 edition of this book. The reason I'm showing it to you is because I had to amend my opinion about astrology to my community and tell them, you're not going to believe this, but I flipped to Gemini just to read about myself. And in 1893, this book nailed me to a T. June 9th, 1973. It nailed me to a T. It even nailed my idiosyncrasies and little things that I wouldn't even admit are my traits to other people. And I was so shocked. I just put the book down and then I got to thinking about it. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go look up Leo. I'm just going to see how much Leo applies to me. Nothing. I looked up Taurus. Nothing. I looked up all 11 other zodiac houses. I looked up in there. Nothing. So I'm here. I am someone who has been very critical of astrology, and it's a conundrum. So I do a video and I tell everybody, and between myself, someone else, I can't remember who it was, someone who used to help out a lot with Archaix and Dawn, there's been probably over 1,500 PDFs of this book I've given out free to the public. And I include it in all my library drives and my super pack drives because so many people ask me for this book. But this book here, if you have not read it, I will send you the PDF after the video. But it's 1893, and it's astonishing how absolutely exact it was in breaking down my personality traits.
Absolutely. No, I have not read that book, and I'd definitely be interested. You do a great job in this book here, Return of the Fallen Ones, talking about the astrological symbols from back then. But what it basically comes down to is a frequency, Jason. The moment you're born, you're being influenced by a frequency. You're coming in on a reality tunnel, as you've so eloquently put it over the years. You're coming in on a reality tunnel. And that reality tunnel is sort of time stamping us. It's imprinting us somehow energetically through the non-physical body. In other words, it's coming from deep within space. And I do believe, I think I know where it's coming from. And the moment we detach from our mothers, we are now our own entity. We are a moment in time that has captured the essence of that energy. But we still carry the lineage of the family dynamics. That's the most amazing part to me, is that you're born to a mother and a father and a grandparent and a grandparent, and it goes back. The lineage goes all the way back. So you're carrying that frequency within you, as at the same time, a new frequency has been created, carrying that lineage from the past. So everything is a frequency. Everything is energy in this universe. It's made up of light, as I have on my hat here, light. Everything is light. Our bodies are vibrating light. And so the moment we're born, whether we use astrology, numerology, it doesn't really matter, but astrology seems to be the most definitive when you study the psychology behind these myths and stories. And that was the thing that blew my mind, Jason, when I first started understanding the mythology, and you've done a great job with the mythology, is you begin to understand they're talking about psychological urges. They're talking about, events that are happening inside of us, not just at the micro level, it's happening at the macro level. So these planets somehow are influencing us. I say it's not who we are, but they're influencing us. They create urges in us. And depending on the moment you come in.
I'll offer a different perspective that actually makes you correct, but it changes what's really going on.
Sure, go right ahead.
Absolutely. Okay. In the oldest concepts, the planets weren't spheres out there like our world. That concept didn't exist. There were wanderers. These were, the gods were passing through there. Each Mars was a wanderer. Venus was a wanderer. They each had, different names. Jupiter could be seen sometimes during the year. Uranus and Neptune, Saturn could never be seen. But it is my personal belief that the exact moment of conception, not your birth, but the moment that you are conceived and you begin to become, pre-embryonic and start growing, that is when the DNA, that is when all the structure, that is when the immortal is attached to physicality. That's when a female begins to possess two immortal souls, her own and now the one she's carrying, and the one that's growing in an embryo, growing into a small human. So these females, at the birth of two souls in the female, is when conception happens. And it's when this conception happens in the field where these wanderers are in conjunction with Venus, the planets, all of that is when the magic happens, not when someone's actually coming out of the avatar. When one avatar is making their exodus from a female avatar, a mother. I think all the magic happens at the moment of conception. That's where all all the information is impregnated into the new soul, the new avatar, their new character traits, their new role in the creation. Everything is set right there. All the parameters for all the variables that they're able to work with in life, it's all in their genome right there. And it has everything to do with the timing when that happened. And it's like looking at it at the photo negative of astrology. Astrology focuses on where the planets are in conjunction and in what houses, but I'm thinking that it has everything to do with the exact timing of the year on the circuit of the year, the Shar system, this 360-day system, where someone is born is, I mean, I'm talking about to the second where they were born is when all that magic happens, and that astrology over millennia developed out of pattern recognition abilities of people who realized, damn, all these people have the same character traits, and the moon was in this house when this planet was visible at this time, and I think astrology developed out of that system. This is just my opinion.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. And by the way, in astrology, there are so many different facets of astrology. There's mundane astrology, there's spiritual astrology, there's all kinds of astrology. And I do believe there is one on prenatal birth, where what you just talked about, where you basically create a chart on the moment of conception, and which makes a whole lot of sense. And I've even thought about this as well. Where does this soul come from? Now, this is a big, deep question. I'm sure you've pondered many years as well. Where does this soul come from? How does it, embed itself into that egg and that sperm, and and all of a sudden the magic starts to happen? So I've gone down that rabbit hole as well, and I think I've got some answers. And of course, I want to share that with you and your audience, and I absolutely want your feedback on it. But I would agree with you. But the thing is, when the mother is giving birth, it's the actual physical, let's say physical opening of that moment in time that the child is detached from the mother. It becomes its own energy, even though it's still connected energetically through the cord. And we capture that essence. Okay, let's put it that way, the essence. And I got to tell you, after almost 30 years of studying astrology and studying human nature my whole life, it is amazingly accurate to me, Jason. Whether I look at it from the numerology perspective on that day, or I look at the planetary alignments, it's almost as if I'm tuning into a frequency on a radio. When I'm tuning the channels, I'm looking at the planetary alignments on that child that's born, and I'm able to tune into that person's energy, that frequency, if you will. And all of a sudden, the patterns just start to reveal themselves to an astrologer. That's what we do. And so really, astrologers are more than just, technical people that love mathematics. And because I've met a lot of astrologers are so OCD about the alignments being exactly perfect and this and that. And it's just, no, you got to use it as a tool. But so this soul that gets created is a very interesting idea. And where does it come from? How does it know where to go? And I've thought about these things, and the planets seem to be a heavy influence depending on that time that energy or that spirit is deciding to basically come into the womb. And so let's say you as a Gemini, you're being influenced by Mercury. Mercury's the planet associated with Gemini. So chances are, whatever the soul has traveled through time and space or dimensions or other fields of consciousness, somehow the Gemini or Mercury energy has been heavily influenced on that soul, on that spirit, as it incarnates into the woman's womb. Does that make sense? It's like heavily influenced, or maybe it takes a break, on the planet Mercury and says, all right, I'm going to sit here for a while and absorb this energy, and then I'm going to, dive into this womb. But I also do believe that the spirits, the souls that are around that get incarnated into families somehow have a family lineage that goes way back. So in other words, I've incarnated into my family, but chances are I was there before, or I've had other experiences in other lifetimes with those family members, because that's my timeline. That is my reality tunnel. that I have in this, at this moment in time, and probably in the future as well. I will incarnate again, maybe a different member, a different association to that family member. And so it's like these reality tunnels are almost set in stone from what I gather. And I could be wrong, but, I'd like to, does that make sense, Jason, that we carry the family lineage reality tunnel with us? And I've seen
I'm already convinced, pursuant to Russian studies showing, children that are prepubescent they've been studied to remember things very clearly. And the reason they thought they were just overactive imaginations is because their memories were not from the perspective of a child. So they didn't have the frames of reference and vocabulary to explain exactly what they were remembering. But when the scientists studied them, the reports were very conclusive. And it shows that they were remembering things from the perspective of 60, 70, and 80-year-olds. And then, so it's something about puberty completely changes the ability of a soul to remember its previous incarnation. But yeah, I believe that a lot of people reincarnate basically into the same families or same units. But one incidence of reincarnation really opened my eyes, because they studied this boy. He knew detailed, specific information, even about where money was hidden, and he needed to get that information. He knew he needed to get that information to the family he had left behind, and the family was 2 blocks away. And there's no blood relation whatsoever. But when he reincarnated on a mission to tell that family where he hid that money. And listen, we have so many stories like this. Yeah. That it just, I can't deny reincarnation, that we're living, I call them life sims, that we're living through life sims. And I believe that death, I don't even believe death is negative. I believe death from our perspective in the construct seems to be negative, seems to be terrible. However, it's a necessary pattern break. And then It's just a necessary pattern break on one confluence of life. This is one life we're living, but we're living on a stage, and we're playing many different parts.
Oh, I totally agree. Well, look at nature, Jason. I mean, observing nature and how it destroys naturally, before man got involved in manipulating weather, how it naturally destroys things. Everything is cyclical. Everything is cyclical, including this body. I mean, every cell in our body, keeps rechanging and dying and reforming itself on an ongoing basis. So the entire universe is like this giant cycle that's going on the macro level and on the micro level.
Oh, now you're speaking my language. If you're talking about the microcosm being an absolute reflection of the macrocosm, you're talking simulation theory. Because even if you use human biology as an example, every single cell contains the information for the whole avatar. The DNA is in every single cell on how to build the entire human body. So if the same thing is in the atom, and the atom contains all the information that you need to build whatever the atom is attached to, then information is holographic. Information is holographic, and biology is holographic. Then we're looking at a vast, moving Mandelbrot set. We're living in a hologram.
You got it. Exactly. That's the same conclusion I came to. And when I stumbled upon your work, almost 2 years ago, it was like the light going off, oh my God, he's filling in all of this other information that I never thought about, or I, couldn't access or didn't understand. And so here you are coming into the picture, explaining it so beautifully in your books and on your videos. And I said, this is somebody I need to know. This is somebody. And by the way, Jason, not to brag or anything, I knew I was going to be talking to you at some point down the road, because I am very much in tune with my own life and my own reality. And I could see things coming very clearly. And this is why I do sort of predictions on, YouTube and all this other stuff. I tell people these are the trends. This is the possibility of what's going to happen, and so on and so forth. But the thing that really gets me,
let me interject. That prescience that you experience, and I've told other people this, that prescience you experience is nothing personal. I have that too. All it denotes is a very strong connection to source.
Exactly. Now, let's go down this rabbit hole and talk about source for a second. I know you've thought about it on a deep level, and I have as well. And, what makes up all of this all of these cells and these bodies and all of this energy, where does it come from? I've often thought about this. Now, I got to tell you, I've had a couple of experiences with ayahuasca and magic mushrooms in the last, let's say, 10 years. That's been my extent of it. And boy,
Right.
did it open up things like you wouldn't believe. Now, I'm not a big drug user. I don't drink. I'm not into any of that stuff. But I've studied all this stuff, and I said to myself, I need to know more. I need to understand how this reality works. And the first time I did the ayahuasca, it really showed me the geometry. The first thing that comes up is these geometrical patterns and this energy and everything that's a part of you. Because I don't, these 4 times I did it, I don't do them to get high or anything. I did it to basically wanting to know, in a sort of a shaman's way of doing things, is asking it to show me what I need to see. So I was tapping into sort of my higher consciousness, if you will, or my oversoul. And it began to show me things that I can't put to words. I just cannot. And a lot of people that have had near-death experiences say the same thing. There's no words for what you could see and feel and hear. There's a knowing that is incredible, especially with the magic mushrooms. The ayahuasca, I wouldn't recommend it because there's that vomiting feeling. You feel sick and nauseous, and it was uncomfortable, but it was something I had experienced for myself. But going down with the magic mushrooms, I had a good friend of mine. He passed away now, but he was the one that turned me on to it. Says, try these in a spiritual, mystical way. Don't do them to get high and all that other crap. And I said, okay. So I went down this rabbit hole, and the geometry, the symbolism, the things that I needed to see were just evolving. Like, for instance, the first time I did the magic mushrooms, which was about 8 years ago, I got shot up out of my body into hyperspace. And I began to see space. I was in literally, my consciousness was in space. Now, my natural inclination is space, and because I'm an astrologer and all that, so it's natural that it would arrive into that realm. But I began to see things that didn't make any sense, but I, somehow equated to what it was going on in the world. And what I began to see, Jason, and maybe you could confirm this, was energy coming from the galactic center. The galactic center is not just this black hole in space that seems to suck everything in. It's a torus field. And what I was shown was these bluish white waves of light coming from the galactic center. Now, this makes sense to me when you think about some of the ancient cultures, and please, this is where your expertise comes in, where they talk about Ophiuchus and the galactic center being so important for the material that makes up these bodies and the energy that is being created in this reality. So it's my contention, or my theory, that whatever's making up this physical world is coming from the galactic center. Does that make sense to you, Jason? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I'm a student of Paul LaViolette, and in one of my Nunophiles videos, I should do more on this. I really kind of glossed over it, but he's a physicist, and he come up with a whole new way of interpreting reality called subquantum kinetics. And the book is fantastic. It's very deep, but he also shows that there are these very well recorded gamma ray bursts that explode forth from the galactic center, and they bathe Earth at specifically predictable times. And he shows crystalline content, and he shows the way we can do these thermoluminescent dating. And he even admits these are only plus 150 to 100 years forward and backward. So it's a 200-year window of you could miss, but they're every 800 years, and he shows this. And when I was reading this book, it didn't click. And then at the end of the book, I'm going, wait a minute, 792 years is pretty damn close to 800 years. So I went back and looked at all his examples, and I recorded every date, every time he said these bursts happened. And then I showed a chart where the gamma ray bursts bathed the Earth, which changed things on Earth. And yet it's a radiation that doesn't kill living organisms. It literally changes and manipulates their DNA to make it's like induced adaptation, not evolution, but it's inducing changes in biological organisms. They acquire new traits. They come out with looking different and whatever. But these gamma ray bursts lined up perfectly with the appearances of the Nemesis X object. And I showed this. I was like, wow, how did I miss this? But that's what he said. He said that a lot of the activity in the cosmos or in the sky, and I believe the sky is simulated, but the galactic center is where it's like looking down a kaleidoscope, and we're in the center of the kaleidoscope, and there's something bathing. There's an energy that bathes us at different times, and it's different energies. It's gamma ray every 800 years, 792 years, but it's other energies at other times.
Exactly, and that's and you put it so well there, because this is what I saw, and now you're confirming it. And there are other scientists out there that I'm sure came to the same conclusion. But this is where your work ties in so beautifully. When I started reading about and learning about the Phoenix phenomena and Nibiru or Nemesis X or whatever, whatever the objects are, when they come into our galaxy, they are pulling on that galactic center. Just as you pointed out in Anunnaki homeworld here, okay, that, 1983, what is it, NASA, no such agency, basically began to understand that there was something coming into our galaxy. And in your book, you say it's the Phoenix, which I would have to agree with you, because you've done the research and it makes a lot of sense. And I've listened to other scientists talk about this as well. So when this object or these objects, several objects that come into our galaxy here, they begin to pull harder on the galactic center. And this ties into what's going on right now in today's world. That's what I've equated, is that we have a shift in the energy fields, in this gamma ray, in this, and it's all being scientifically proven also. I've read, and I've used this on my YouTube channels, many scientific journals that have been saying we're getting bombarded by this intense cosmic energy, or these cosmic waves, and these energy fields that they cannot quite understand or explain. I think they can, but they just can't say anything about it. So I think this is what's happening to us. There's an increase in frequency and energy that's distorting the field or the simulation. And it's causing a lot of changes in us, like you pointed out. Physically, absolutely, DNA changes. I've noticed in the last 3 years how my physical body has absolutely changed. My eating habits, my sleeping habits, the way I see things, increased psychic ability. I mean, these things are natural occurrences when this field gets disrupted and we are being bombarded by higher radiation. And that's what's actually happening. But it's also affecting the other planets. Remember, the Russian scientists in the early 90s were talking about how the planets were getting heated up. The temperatures were going up. And so it wasn't just Earth. And so here we are today going...
You know what happens to our world when it gets heated up? It's very easy. It's very simple. Just a simple logic train will lead you to the conclusion that if our world subsurface just raises a few degrees in temperature, the result after the pushing up of magma, becoming lava streams, becoming volcanic outgassing underneath submarine volcanoes and surface volcanoes, the only thing that can happen is a oversaturation of the mesosphere. And when that happens with pumice and ash and more moisture, the whole world turns into a greenhouse, a vapor canopy appears, and the poles melt within years.
Jason, we are so on the same page, it's scary, okay? Because you're articulating exactly what I've discovered over the years so beautifully. Now, what you just said fits in line with some of the visions I've had over the years. And this has been over the last 5 or 6 years. I've actually got videos on YouTube talking about it. The third time I did the magic mushrooms, I was shown volcanic ash, volcanoes going off simultaneously, and I was shown a time frame it was going to happen. So I'll share it with your audience here. I was shown the years very clear, September and August of 2027. There are going to be 3 volcanoes that erupt simultaneously. Now, if you've been following the news, and I know you have, and your followers and your listeners have, notice all the volcanic activity that seems to be acting up. Have you noticed that, Jason?
Yes, I have. I have. It doesn't. A lot of it doesn't make the news, but there are people like Dutch Sense and others that are keeping tabs on it. And volcanic activity is on the rise, and it's always on the rise at the approach of Phoenix. Always.
You got it. Exactly. And that was my conclusion as well. After reading your material and following your work, I said, he's correct. He's absolutely right. And so this object, or these objects that are coming into our atmosphere, are absolutely going to continue to pull on the Earth's magnetic fields. It's going to create more of that vapor canopy that you're talking about. And so the years ahead have a lot to do with Earth changes as well as physical changes that are happening to all of us. And
Right.
so this is why I think we're also seeing a lot of people losing their sense of reality, or as I like to say, they're losing their marbles, because they haven't based their reality in anything concrete, and especially if you're religious. And I'm not a big fan of, like you, I'm not a fan of rigid. What do you call it? Rigid. I can't even say it. Religious concepts that people hold on to that are not going to get them through some major changes that are going to continue to occur. And so that was really big, seeing these volcanoes going off in 2027. So
Okay, you say 2027.
yes.
So remember, I know you've heard me say this many times.
Mhm.
If something is true, it can be seen from multiple different
Right.
vantage points. So to confirm what you're saying, that in 2027 we're going to see a heightened activity in volcanic activity. Well, I'm going to tell you now. If you study the calendrics as I've done, and you already know that 1998 was one of our major epicentral years, forward and backward in time, showing the palindromic nature of reality. So 2027 is the holographic reflection of the year 1969. They are both equidistant from 1998, which is 666 times 3. And I've showed hundreds of examples of this forward and backward sequencing in time. 1969 is known by geologists as being the longest continuously erupting volcano in history. For 3 years, from 1969, 1970, and 1971, a volcano just continuously erupted. Now, that was just one, but in the holo field, this is all that's needed to fulfill the same thing, but many volcanoes doing that in 2027. By the way, the name of that volcano was Mauna Ulu, and it was in it was in the month of May, which is the Phoenix month. That's when it started. And I don't know where this place is. I have no idea how to pronounce it. This must be like Indonesia or something. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Kilauea. Kilaua. I don't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to before you moved on to another subject, I just wanted to show that this is a tenet of Archaix, and we're always going to be able to see the same thing from multiple different perspectives.
No, absolutely, and I appreciate that. By the way, another major volcano in Indonesia is very active right now, from what I gather. About a year ago or 2 years ago, I don't remember correctly, but the Indonesian volcanoes are acting up. But that was shown to me that was going to be the major indicator of massive change. What I began to see, and a lot of psychics, true psychics and intuitives, began to see the same thing. And I noticed this pattern. So it's like the collective consciousness started to see, clearly about what was the possibility of something to come. And it made so much sense. And I've tried to, tell people that the water was going to become an issue because the magnetic north is also changing. We know this scientifically. I have friends who are airline pilots. They're saying we have to constantly readjust our instruments because magnetic north keeps moving, keeps drifting off, which in turn will affect the water on the earth.
So where is magnetic north today in juxtaposition to true north? Because when I published Anunnaki Homeworld in 2011, the latest data I had access to at that time, what I published in 2011 is that we were 11 degrees. There was an 11-degree variance between magnetic true north and magnetic north. But since 2011, that has changed drastically.
Yes, it has. And I don't really know exactly. I remember reading about it somewhere, a scientific journal, that we've drifted off. It can't be too far off from 11, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in that region. It's not that dramatic. But the point being is that this Earth is made up of 75% water. And when we have that kind of shift, the other thing I did see in my journey there was water splashing upon the coastlines of the west coast of America and South America. These waves are going to be very big. Now, we've already seen some of this. Last year, we saw San Francisco had these huge, waves that went way into the community. I've been to Southern California several times and noticed the ocean is acting very peculiar, and that's again, indications. It's like animals when they know an earthquake is coming. They start tuning into something. They know something is being thrown off. The magnetic fields are being thrown off. So what I'm saying here is that everything is indicating some sort of massive change coming to the Earth. And even the astrology indicates that when we talk about astrology, Pluto going into Aquarius. Next year, we have Uranus, the planet of disruption, going into Gemini. So it's like this pattern is continuing that has to do with change, has to do with physical change, has to do with awareness. It has to do with, different things that are coming to the surface that we're needing to pay attention to. And so these are some of the things that I've seen in my visions. And your work absolutely ties into this Phoenix object and in how it affects human behavior and the physical world.
So these tsunamis you're talking about, I'm absolutely on board with it. And let me tell you why. I recently did a video, 1871, called Cyclical Deluge Theory, where this guy literally dismantled Ice Age theory, completely dismantled it, and explained what is happening when these worldwide floods occur and how the poles and the ice develop. So what you're saying about this massive tsunami or the ocean being tumultuous on the west coast of North America and South America is absolutely what is going to happen. And let me explain why. The ocean level doesn't change. It never changes. What changes is subsidence and upheavals. Different areas come up and down. And in his theory, he literally shows exactly how the equatorial bulge has this subsurface pressure, and it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And then through volcanism, all these volcanoes going off at the same time, the equatorial bulge collapses under the Atlantic and under the Pacific. And when that happens in a day or two, it creates a tsunami coming from the Antarctic region, going over, because there's way more water in the Pacific than in the Atlantic. When the bulge is removed, the waters come in like a tsunami, flood the entire North American, Central American area, Asia, Europe, everything in the Northern Hemisphere is flooded, and then the water recedes back, and the pressure begins to build, and it takes only a few centuries for the equatorial bulge to return. And then it's a huge cycle, and then it outgasses again, collapse. It's the bottom of the Pacific that raises, causes the flooding, and then collapses, causing flooding. It is a cycle that this guy showed in this research from 1871 that so baffled the scientific community, they had no response but to ignore it. It covered all the bases, answered all the questions, and it's amazing. What we're going to see with the return of the Phoenix is a release of this pressure. Before Phoenix even gets here, there's going to be a total release of this pressure. There's going to be earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. All of this is going to be leading up to 2040. 2040 is the final part. After that, it's a period of peace. Talking about geographical peace. Nothing tumultuous, but it's going to get more and more tumultuous until that expenditure of energy, which is what we call the Phoenix phenomenon.
Well, that's really good to know. I did not know that, but thank you for sharing that, because that makes a lot of sense to me. Why I was seeing the water levels going up on the West Coast, and in the Pacific. But there's another factor here, Jason, and I'm sure you've investigated as well. The scientists, and when I say scientists, we have to take everything with a grain of salt with them.
Of course.
There is a comet that is supposed to land in April of, I believe, 2028, according to their calculations, in the Pacific. Now that is a possibility, because from your research, I've also, and throughout history, what caused a lot of the floods were some sort of object that came in from space and literally, created these floods. So what do you think about that comet that they're suggesting? And I forgot the name of it. It was April of 2028, I believe, is the target date, and it was going to hit the Pacific. Do you know anything about that, or?
Are you talking about the asteroid Apophis?
I believe so. That's it. Thank you. That's it. The asteroid Apophis. That's right.
Yeah, Apophis derives from Apep, the destroyer, ancient Egyptian.
Right.
Well, as a simulationist, I believe everything in the sky is simulated, but that doesn't mean that we don't have objects falling from the sky, because we do. Charles Fort, right here, spent his life researching over 500 different scientific reports, and he concluded that we live in some type of construct that is very unusual. But he also showed icebergs that fell from the sky, meteoric rock, cometary material, gelatinous, weird, clear, sulfur-smelling gelatin that used to rain from the sky. Even in recent times, people thought they were shooting stars. But I am more on board with the whole Apep Apophis scenario, because it's very easy in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s for astronomy to be in response to intelligence agencies putting things out and say, hey, look, we already know it's in the plans. In 2027, 2028, we need to affect this. 2029, we need to do this. So let's go ahead and put it in motion to the public that we know that there's an object out there, and it might be just justification to destroy something in the near future, which is totally of human provenance and has nothing to do with anything coming from the sky. I am totally, absolutely distrustful of anything NASA puts out. I just am. But the fact that we've had bolides, evidence of things that have fallen from the sky that have caused great destruction, I know for a fact it's happened. What they are, I don't know. But I believe there's a weapon in the sky. I don't believe Phoenix is far away. It's always been here. We just can't see it. It's hidden in the sky. And so yeah, my whole take on what's really going on is not heliocentric at all. It's not. It used to be, but it's not. It's not heliocentric at all anymore. There's too many anomalies that are unaccounted for in the solar system model for me to actually accept it at face value right now.
Now, I totally agree with you. Whatever is put out by the scientific community is either being misinformation, or just it's not accurate. And I totally agree with you. But let me share another vision. Let's just say that I had, that there is another twin star or a dwarf star in our galaxy that we cannot see. Now, I don't know if this is, if this is Phoenix, the Phoenix, but I was shown, and again, this is through the mushroom. So again, take it at face value and take it for whatever it's worth, that there is another object that we know the scientific community has been tracking in the South Pole or in Antarctica, that seems to be there. And there's been too many pictures online of people taking pictures of the sun and another object in the back, just vaguely seen in the background. It could be a dwarf star, a brown dwarf, something else, a twin. And you talked about this in one of your books, how we definitely had either two suns or a binary star system. And so there's definitely another object there that seems to also be influencing what's happening on this planet. Again, my thought or theory is that these objects are coming in and they're pulling on the galactic center, and they're changing the magnetic fields of the Earth. And they know this. The powers that shouldn't be know this. Whoever's controlling the simulation or influencing the simulation knows this. Now, can you elaborate a little bit, Jason, on that binary star system, or of course, your research? Have you discovered anything along those lines?
In the uniformitarian astronomy model that has been given to us today, over 50% of every single twinkling star you see in the sky, when you go out at night and you can see this huge canopy of luminaries, according to the uniformitarian model, they have published that over 50% of those luminaries are binary systems, which are two stars, one revolving around the other or revolving around each other, but they're so far away that they appear as one star. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. That's what NASA tells me. I can't see that in a telescope. When I look at a telescope, I see an oscillating field. Even when I look at Jupiter, when I look at Mars, I see an oscillating field. I do not see around. There's nothing solidified. I don't know. This is the model. Now,
Right.
With over 50% being binaries, that means it wouldn't be a mystery that our own world is binary. But I know that we are in a simulated binary system for the simple fact is our astronomy, what has been recorded since the Venus almanacs all the way till today, has been two ecliptic planes intersecting. We can't make sense of everything that we've seen in the historical record and even today with one ecliptic plane. An ecliptic plane is the sun's equator. That's the ecliptic plane. And all the planets allegedly move on that plane of the sun's equator. The further they are away from the surface of the sun in this model, the more they deviate off the ecliptic by 10 to 20 degrees. Beyond the asteroid belt, Jupiter is not perfectly on the ecliptic. It deviates throughout the year. Saturn's even worse. Uranus and Neptune actually switch places. They switch orbital belts for half of their journey. So what we have here is we have the Phoenix being recorded 3 different times in history as suddenly appearing out of northern space, covering the surface of the sun from the north, and then vanishing into southern space. The third time it was observed was 1764, May 15th. It was entered into the minutes of the Royal Society by astronomer Hoffman, and they dismissed him. It's still there, published today, and I've quoted it, but they dismissed him because supposedly nothing can move that way. Can't move. It's not on the plane of the ecliptic, but it was. It was on the dark stars ecliptic. It was on Nemesis ecliptic. This is where our world initially came from. We're not even supposed to be here, because anyone who has studied the Titius-Bode law will know that Mercury times pi from the surface of the sun is exactly where you find Venus. Venus times pi from the surface of the sun is exactly where you find Mars. Mars times pi from the surface of the sun is exactly where the asteroid belt is. Earth is tucked in between the two. And where is it? It's on the dark stars ecliptic in the month of May. Only in the month of May is our world intersecting the dark stars ecliptic. Now, this is all simulated. I don't believe it's all real what you see in the sky. But we're in a controlled construct that is simulating something that is real somewhere else. This has been my model from the beginning of Archaix. So I'm on board with everything you're saying. I just see it as a construct that we're living in a simulated world. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're trying to figure something out. I don't know. But you're right. There is a dark star. Many people believe it might be the Cygnus Rift because we can't see past it. The Cygnus Rift is a tear in space, and we can't penetrate it. It absolutely absorbs light. We would never be able to see a dark star. The only way you can see a frozen star or a collapsed star, which is what a technical term for a dark star, the only way you'd ever be able to perceive its presence is by looking at an area of space and seeing some stars disappear and then days or months later reappear in a dark area. That's the only way you would know it was there, because light can't escape it. Light can't escape it. This is the uniformitarian astronomy model. A dark star is just as bright as our sun. Unfortunately, the gravity well has imploded, meaning it's a tear in space. It's probably coming out of a quasar somewhere else in the fabric of space-time. But in that locality, it is light folding in on itself in a toroidal field that cannot be seen outside that field.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. Again, getting these bits and pieces of information from time to time, I have to go out and research it or try and understand it or ask my oversoul or higher consciousness to make sense of it. And here you are, articulating it so well and so beautifully. But let's talk about, what we're entering right now with all of these changes that are occurring, because this is, important to most of humanity because they seem to be awakening. They seem to be going through this massive shift in consciousness. And I've seen this since 2008 because the information just kept coming to me, and then I would do a little research and try and understand it. And what I was shown was society was going to break down in some way. And there was going to be a great divide that occurred. And I know you talked about this as well, this great rift, this great societal change that occurs. And it has to do with frequencies and energies. And we're seeing that today. I mean, it is becoming very difficult for me, and probably for you as well, to be around people that are just not on the same vibrational field, or their energy is just disruptive. I can't go into a supermarket without picking up on somebody's energy. And so it's become so obvious to me. This is why I'm in nature all the time now, and I advocate that big time. Get out in nature, the water, the trees, the birds, whatever, because the frequencies are shifting and changing. And the astrology, and this is where astrology is useful, we could at least see a pattern. We could at least see a timeline. We could at least kind of try to make sense of this movement, this energy that's shifting. And so what I see here is society breaking down. Those that are clueless are going to continue to exit the simulation, or mentally, physically, and emotionally, everything is going to affect them. At the same time, people that are awake and aware, or understand who they are and understand how it works in the simulation and how it works in this reality, will continue to be shown things or continue to be guided towards things that they need. Like, for instance, I remember hearing in 2008, you need to move north. I was living in Phoenix at the time, and I have a very interesting story about Phoenix. And so I was guided to just go north. And this is what I've been doing. I'm living out of my RV, my Class A RV, and I've been traveling, the last 2 years and spending time in national parks and in nature, just to listen, to tune into what's going on. So I'm seeing the societal change, and it will continue to change. And I feel sorry for some of the folks that are following the politics. And I try to tell people, stay away from the political theater because it's not real. These are actors. And I'm telling them that to get back into nature, because that's going to be grounding. It's going to help them in some way. But this change that's going to continue to occur is happening psychologically and physically. And if your belief system is not rooted in some sort of understanding, you're going to lose your grip on reality. So I'm seeing that as being a part of the changes that are occurring as well. And I'm not the only one. We're not the only ones that are doing that. So I know you're seeing the same patterns that I think you talked about it in one of your books, how, when these energies came in, or the Phoenix object or their Nemesis X, people started losing their minds. They started to act weird and differently. Am I correct in that observation, Jason?
Yeah, that's where these insane asylums, sanitarians, came in. It's a lot of people were good with the switch. They may have been discombobulated. In 1902, massive changes to our world happened. Very well done. To have the documentation we have is astonishing. That I've been able to put so many people have sent me so much stuff, but the population at large went right through it as if they just didn't remember. And we have these massive orphanages opening up all over the place. What happened to all the adults? Because at the exact same time in history that orphan trains were a thing, so were sanitariums.
Interesting. Well, I have a thought about, these asylums and people that are in mental institutions. I think what's happening to many of them is the way they're wired, or the way they came in on a certain timeline or reality tunnel. They are being exposed to so much information that their bodies and minds and their spirit cannot process it. Does that make sense? Right. It's overwhelming their senses. And they can't deal with it. So they either have to be medicated, or they have to be put somewhere that, they're just operating on a different frequency. They're operating on a different level, And so I'm seeing more and more of that. I am absolutely seeing people losing their sense of reality. And so being someone who's in tune, I have to stay in tune. I have to just keep my sense of my connection to higher spirit, higher consciousness, in order to be able to be useful, to be helpful. But I've got an interesting story I want to share with you about Phoenix, Jason. For most
All
of
right.
my life, on and off, the Phoenix object, or not the Phoenix object, but this symbol here that you have of the bird, you know, break free or die trying.
Yeah.
I kept seeing this symbol. As a matter of fact, as a young kid, I remember drawing the Phoenix. Okay. And I didn't know why. I didn't understand why. And throughout my life, as I've gotten older, the Phoenix object or the Phoenix thought, I would say, or the image would appear to me. So much so that I actually moved to Phoenix, Arizona, thinking that, okay, I'm supposed to live in Phoenix, Arizona. But when I stumbled upon your work talking about the Phoenix, then it was like the goosebumps going off. You know, it was like, that's why the Phoenix was so important. It wasn't about the location. It wasn't about the image. It was about something that was going to affect the reality, the simulation, you know, this world in some way. And so that makes a whole lot of sense to me. Now, this symbol of the Phoenix and how it was shown throughout time and how it would cause changes to society and the world at large. So kudos to, you know, researching all this and even creating a Phoenix symbol here associated with the Phoenix. And so, you know, I think this is a very important time for those of us that need to understand what's actually happening so we could better prepare ourselves psychologically and physically, you know, depending on where to go and the people to surround yourself with and so on and so forth. And it's almost like the community that understands this is finding each other. Have you noticed that pattern? You know, everyone that wants to know about spirituality, anyone that wants to know about our real history, anyone that wants to know about what's really going on seems to be finding the other souls, the other people that they need to at this time. You know?
I agree. I mean, just like the media, the media was infiltrated. Alt media came out, and then alt media got hijacked and pretends to be alt media when it's just repackaged mainstream media. The truther community was infiltrated. Man, we got so many shills out there. It's amazing. But you know what? The wheat. Hey, you know what? The wheat and the tares are being separated. People are waking up very fast to those who provide no value to the community and are just on some financial BS, or in those who are truly offering real value. And you already know, a lot of people get discouraged with me. I just don't care. I'm going to continue to call these shills out, and I'm not done. My list is growing. I'm just, you know what? It's in me. The warrior spirit is in me. Maybe you can explain it. Maybe my stars were stacked that way at my moment of conception. I don't know. But I can tell you this. I was born within 10 minutes after 12 noon, 1973. And I was born underwater. My mama was 16 years old. She was scared to death of the pain, and she was petite. So I was born in a bathtub. And I didn't even get my birth certificate until I was 5 years old.
Were you born in Houston, Jason? Where were you born?
I was born exactly at 30 degrees north latitude, the same latitude as the Great Pyramid on the other side of the world.
Imagine
in Spring, Texas.
Spring, Texas. I'll look up your chart and I can go over it with you, you know, off air if you want. That's
whatever. It doesn't matter. I have a real serious question for you.
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. And this is a question born out of ignorance because I don't know, but Can astrology be used not on people, but on phenomena? Can we look at a year in world history where significant things happened that were all relative to each other? Massive things. Can we take that year when all these things erupted like on the same day, and then look at the astrology for that and be able to use that? Will it have any predictive value for a similar series of events, not involving people? I'm talking about a year that a bunch of volcanoes and earthquakes happen, ecological disaster. We're talking about the sun dimming for about 25 years. Can we take that date and then look at where everything was at that and see, okay, can we use a computer to see when all those variables are going to return?
Yes, we can. Yes, we absolutely can. Now, it would take a really good astrologer to, calculate things out, because that's when, you see, in astrology, we could go very deep with the aspects, how planets relate to each other. And there are always aspects in astrology. I'm sure you've seen in astrology charts where we look at the trines, the squares, the oppositions, and then we have the smaller. They're all there. It's just a matter of the seeker, tuning into it. But yes, to answer your question, absolutely. And I'll give you an example. In astrology, when we have eclipses, they also affect the future timelines. So let's just say, and I've already said this on my YouTube channel, when we had that eclipse on April the 8th of this year, it was in Aries in our Western astrology. I said, we know as astrologers that we could kind of predict future events based on that eclipse. So that eclipse occurred. I said, watch the third month from that eclipse, which was July, the week of July the 13th. What took place on the week of July the 13th? Mr. T was shot at, correct? You see what and now I've already predicted again, watch the week of October the 8th. Another event is going to occur that's going to bring our attention. Now, I want to focus on October the 8th because one of the visions that I saw, and another YouTuber, David Dubine of Adapt 2030, did a fantastic job of this. We have the 4 outer gas planets, the gas giants, behind the Earth. And all the planets are behind the Earth, and we are in front of the sun with nothing, no planets in front of us. And he looked at that calculation, and the last time that happened was 79 AD. And I think you made reference somewhere in your books there to 79 AD, or in that era of major changes that had occurred on the Earth. Now, he's suggesting the same thing. I looked at the astrology, looking at the same thing, and tuned into it. And I would say the same thing. Something major is going to occur in October of this year. And it's going to be, it could be earthquakes, it could be volcanoes, it could be major announcements, it could be anything. But to answer your question, Jason, yes, we could see the future based on a current event that took place, looking out to see where the next event is very possible to occur, whether it's geological, some location on Earth, or an event that's very similar to that occurred. We could see that in the patterns. Again, it's just pattern recognition. It's symbolism. That's all it is. And I
have another observation now, since I would be very interested in participating in some type of a group that would use astrology on these major events. But where we're going to have an issue is trying to pass over the 713 BC threshold, because any computer software you use for astrology today is probably pretty damn accurate. Astrolabs, that's all pretty mundane. It's easy. But once you get to 713 BC, the rules changed. Mm-hmm. That was the year in history that the year changed. It's the first appearance of a 365.24 year. Before that, every civilization, every culture, even the archaeoastronomy, even the archaeology, all the temples that show 360 niches, 360 blocks on a back wall, 360 candle niches, 360 bowls that were poured, milk was poured into every bowl was filled once a day. 360, all the 8th century BC back. Mm-hmm. Everything was modeled off the 360-day year. Then we had this epic event, this weird object appearing in the sky, a flux tube blast vaporizing 185,000 Assyrians outside of Jerusalem. Assyrian King Sennacherib goes back to Assyria without his army. They've been vaporized in their armor. He gets killed by his brothers because he comes back in shame. He was supposed to use that army to conquer Egypt. He never got the chance. And in the biblical material, we have the same story that's told on the opposite hemisphere in the ancient Olmeca text. We have date stelli. We have the sun retarded its movement. Not only did the sun stop in the sky, it retrograded 10 degrees. Then it stopped again. Then it moved forward the same 10 degrees it lost before it was able to carry on with its movement. Now, this is more evidence to me, since it's you've seen my Chronicon, I'm pretty sure, or you've seen the few references in my published books about this. There's no way that happened if we're on a planet. The tidal forces would have ripped everything apart to have just stopped our world, because the world, under the uniformitarian planetary model, the world could have stopped. But the oceans and bodies of water would have never stopped. They would have continually moved at 1,000 miles per hour, because bodies of water don't stop. They don't have brakes. So right. If it truly stopped like that, there would have been a worldwide flooding, and we don't have any evidence of that at all. But we do have evidence from multiple sources in antiquity that the sun stopped moving. Then it retrograded 10 degrees. In the annals of, I can't even pronounce it, coalition, I don't even want to try to pronounce it. I quoted in my book, Immanuel Velikovsky quotes it as well. The sun did not rise for 20 hours, according to the ancient American traditions. It's the exact same time. So the reason I'm mentioning this is I'm on board with astrology being absolutely precise up until we get to that threshold. But before the computers would have to be programmed to operate on a 360-day year, because whatever this event did, it slowed the sky sim 5.25 days a year. So yeah, I'd be on board with that, but we'd have to do something about 713, or just not look past 713 BC.
Right. And that makes total sense. And I would agree with you, because oftentimes when I looked at dates beyond in the BCs, it is definitely different. We know we had a different sky back then. We know things were changed, and let's face it, they didn't have the accurate records that we do, let's say, today. But I would agree with you, and this is why, even though I'm a professional astrologer, I tell people, it's not going to be 100% because things have been thrown off. There's no accuracy in the calendars. We know the calendars have been, changed and rigged, and dates have been changed. We went off the lunar calendar, and now we're using this other calendar. So, I mean, that's the problem that we have. Unless you become a scientist and you have real science, and you're a real physicist, that you're actually tracking things, and then using computer models, which they do have today. I mean, let's face it, science is pretty much, up there. And so, but again, I could still look at a chart and calculate, and of course, tune into this stuff myself. Like you, I tune into things and I get answers. Like Tesla used to say, where did all this information come from when he was asked? In my dreams. It's true. So even though I could start a calculation, I could look at a birth chart, I could calculate and figure out what had actually transpired, and get dates. And, like I had the visions of August and September 2027, volcanic activity and all that stuff. In other words, there are people that are able to do this, and with accuracy, with amazing accuracy. And I'm not saying I'm 100% accurate. Nobody's 100% accurate, but it's at least it's a starting point to be able to figure things out. Using this tool of astrology. I mean, there's mathematics as well, but again, it might be off because, like you said, these calendar events and dates were, changed in some way, in some regard. And so, yeah, but I mean, I could definitely help in some way, definitely work on something like that if you're interested.
I would be interested in your take on, have you ever read The Centuries by Mikhail Nostradamus?
No, I did not read that. I know who he is, but I've not read The Centuries, no.
Okay. The prophecies of Nostradamus are very interesting because they're veiled in astrology. I mean, right. All the way through it. Right. I mean, he'll say something about the Ides of March in a court session. The king will bear darkness upon the people. The great pontiff in the sky, which is the sun, will be at 30 degrees of Taurus. And he says, I don't understand any of these things, but he says these things over and over and over. And there's all kinds of astrological codes I would like an astrologer to go to, because that's what Nostradamus was. He was an astrologer. So I would like to see what an astrologer's take is going through all the centuries of Nostradamus, because that information in a sidebar next to the date index of Mario reading would be profound. Because Mario Reading's date index is nailed when the exact year the Queen died, the Phoenix phenomenon 2040, Nemesis X in 2046. His date index nails all of that. He even nails 2070. He nails 2106. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Mario Reading didn't know anything about Archaix when he wrote that book 15, 20 years ago. But Mario Reading's The Complete Prophecies of Nostradamus is one of the best translations. He's a French scholar. His name is Mario Reading.
Yeah, I'm writing him down.
Man, you need to order that book because he nailed it. And he's not taking credit for any predictions. He just found the date index. He just showed that in the letters to King Henry and King Louis and to his own son Caesar, he's just showing that, look, man, in these private letters of Nostradamus, he literally telling us he codified the prophecies. And when you use his date index, man, he nailed it. So that's I was excited about when I read it and then read the correspondences with Phoenix and Nemesis X. It blew my mind.
Interesting. I'll take a look at that, Jason. One of the things that I've done over the years is not to get so, I mean, I love reading and I've read many books, is not to get involved too deeply in other people's information in order to not sway my own view of, information that's coming in. Does that make sense?
I totally get that. I totally get that.
I've tried to stay as centered as I could in my own, abilities or consciousness. But at times the information just comes in or needs to come in because, you need to understand it at that time. Nostradamus, I'm familiar with some of his work. I've read some of his stuff, but, it's by different authors. And I think that absolutely was accurate. I mean, according to his astrology, he was a Sagittarian. Sagittarius, the sign, the symbol associated with Jupiter, has this visionary ability naturally to see the future. And so does the sign of Aquarius in modern astrology. And so I right away, I knew, your spirit knows if something's accurate or it's not accurate.
Right.
And so I give him credit. I absolutely think he was accurate. But again, we're also talking about a man that lived in a time that if you went against what was the common thought, you get beheaded. So you had to talk in code and you had to basically be careful about what you said. Otherwise, they put you to death. So, but the other thing is, astrology, like I said, is such a useful tool and it should be used as just that, I feel sorry for some people that follow astrology so much every single day and want to know exactly what's going to happen and all this other stuff. And then these are the people that are not going to get it because they're not seeing the forest through the trees, And so, but it could absolutely be used in various ways. For instance, I was doing astrology for businesses at one time, people that wanted to start businesses. I would give them dates on when it was a better time for them to start that business. So astrology is such a useful tool. And I think, personally speaking, knowing, you and your birthday and everything else, if you were to dive into just a little bit of the modern astrology and tie it into the past, you would become a phenomenal astrologer, Jason. Not that you're not a phenomenal researcher and someone who's able to, predict the future, but you would tie it in such a way that would be very unique to so many. Because there are a lot of fabulous astrologers out there who are great researchers and know their history and so on. But you bring another level of understanding to astrology. Does that make sense? And
I do. I would prefer an astrologer to actually do that. I wouldn't mind being involved in the research.
Right.
But instead of me bringing that data set to the table, I would like it to be independent of me because it would be corroborative then.
I see. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm willing to apply, but you make the decision. But anyway, I also wanted to talk about something that you mentioned in your books that I also see happening in society today, is this idea of time speeding up. You mentioned it in your book here, The Anunnaki Homeworld. That as the object, the Phoenix object comes in, it appears that time is speeding up. Have you noticed that trend right now, Jason? How it appears that time is accelerating?
I just don't buy into that right now.
Okay.
I see a definitive point. It's a very popular topic in eschatology. As a matter of fact, in the trumpet judgments of the tribulation, as recorded in the book of Revelation, there is a time when 8 hours are removed from the day, and a third of the day, a third of the night, a third of the sun, a third of the moon, a third of the stars are all removed. And we're specifically told it is to keep us from the evil to come. It is an act of mercy, this quickening, so that the tribulation is over faster. But at the same time, in the next chapter, it says that the dragon becomes wroth because basically his time has grown short. Something has happened to abbreviate the actual time that the dragon has to get ready for the coming of whatever's coming in 2106 at the end of this Annus Mundi time, this great pyramid timeline. So as far as the perception that time right now is quickening, I totally understand why people think that. And it's because this massive media, multimedia saturation of phenomena that we do not have time to process the daily news anymore. So many conspiracies are being brought to light. The media is now saturating us, basically telling us the truth. Oh yeah, Bill Gates is guilty of all this. Look what he's doing here, releasing these mosquitoes here. Before we can process that, we find a new report. Look, Pfizer is now found guilty. Look, all these people in Japan are dying. So before we can process anything on a daily basis, and there's 365 days in a single year, but now we're getting over 3 or 4 major headlines barraging us on a daily basis. If you just go on Twitter feed and you see all this stuff, you cannot keep up on a daily basis. The disclosure is real. We are in the revelation period. That's what revelation means. It is the beginning of the apocalypse period. It is the unveiling when reality itself is literally telling us the truth, separating good and evil. It is showing us this is what's been done to you. The media is complicit. The media is actually telling the truth now. All the Epstein stuff, all the connections to Israel, everything's on the table, and every day more and more information is coming out. It doesn't mean anybody's getting prosecuted. It doesn't mean there's any white hats coming to the rescue. It doesn't mean that anything is going to overturn what the Patriot Pacification Program has already done. I mean, that program, the Bolshevik program, was so perfect. There's no countries in the world that are actually fighting each other anymore. The elite are all on board. They have an agenda, and the information saturation is like this release of karmic debt. It's like this is a way that these evil SOBs that are controlling our society can delay their own judgment because they're literally telling us the truth.
I totally agree with everything you just said. Now, from the astrological standpoint, we haven't seen anything yet. What actually is going to occur in the next year or two, because of the symbolism of the planets, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus going into Gemini, and the 2 outer planets of Saturn and Neptune going into Aries, we are going to be saturated unbelievably by information. In other words, it's like something's going to turn on in our minds where we're overloaded with too much information. And I think this is also going to cause society to break down. But getting back to the concept of time, time is Chronos, Saturn, right? And so Pluto, the great destroyer, has been in Western astrology, has been in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. So what I see happening and what has been happening is that time as we know it, as we see it, has been changing. And I could say that in my own personal life where I wake up at about 7:30 or so, I do a few things. Next thing I know, it's 7 o'clock at night. And I'm like, where the hell did the time go? Where did the day go? It's my perception that's changing.
Yes.
And so, and I try to stay off this damn computer as much as possible because, I find myself 3-4 hours a day on this computer. But my point being is something is happening to our perception of time. It seems like with the increase of energy coming in from Galactic Center or the astrology or whatever it is, it's increasing our awareness. That's, we were talking about earlier how the energy is affecting us physically. I think this is part of the physical equation. And with these astrology patterns that are evolving in the next couple of years, it's almost as if we are opening up a little bit more consciousness to let more information in. And if you're not ready for it, like I said, people are not going to be able to, take it. They're not going to be able to understand what's actually happening. So that's what I meant by the speeding up of time. It's like our perception is so completely different than, let's say,
it's absolutely perception, and it's an easy mental exercise to see it. It's a super easy mental exercise. If you were in a room by yourself, sitting in a chair, no matter what was in that room with you, if you were by yourself with nothing to do and you just sat in that chair, 1 hour feels like 10 hours. But if your mind is being occupied and you are receiving signals, and these signals require you to think, oh, okay, that's a knife stabbing in the UK. Oh, okay, that's a coffee shop that got machine gunned in Paris. Oh, okay, this is Pfizer. Japan has just filed an international indictment against Pfizer. Oh, look, Africa. They've got charges against Bill Gates right now in international court for vaccine murder. So all these things, I just cited all real stuff. So all the saturation of information, because we have to process things sequentially, by the time we're done with this amazing amount of data that's now coming to us on a daily basis, hours have gone by. It felt like minutes.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And that's why I find myself oftentimes going out into the trees and nature just to slow things down, just to keep things in perspective. So I totally agree with you. And as far as the politics goes, I have to follow this because I'm predicting trends or showing people trends and cycles. And I'm well aware of all of this nonsense. And when I stumbled upon, your thought about the Patriot Pacification Program, makes a lot of sense, except I thought of it this way, with Trump. And I do support Trump, and I've said I'd support Trump for one reason and one reason only. He has been chosen, or he is the person that is exposing or showing the average person how corrupt or how controlled the simulation is. Does that make sense? That was the only reason I said I supported Trump. It wasn't politics. It wasn't any of that stuff. Someone has chosen this man to put him out in the forefront to say, hey, we need you to kind of show people a little bit more about what's going on. So he's slowly introducing this idea of everything is being controlled, especially some of his earlier speeches, Jason. He talked about there are bankers and people in hidden societies, and JFK also talked about this as well, that there's something controlling humanity, the governments, I think it's the religious institutions myself. The three major religions actually have greater control over society than people want to believe, and so I think there's an exposure, there's part of the hidden agenda that needs to come forth. And I agree with you. Yes, it's going to saturate our minds. It's going to just bring it all out to where people are going to go, what do we do? What do we do? And so, unfortunately, I do see this somehow being tied into this extraterrestrial agenda. And I do want to get your take on extraterrestrials. I know you've talked about them from time to time. I have not personally seen any or been in contact or had any visions of them myself, okay? But there are some stories out there that really are kind of eye-opening, like the Billy Meyer case out of Switzerland. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Jason. Billy Meyer, Switzerland?
I'm familiar with the name.
Okay. He's the one-armed man, Swiss man, that has been supposedly in contact with the beings from the Pleiades, physical humans from the Pleiades. And he's got pictures and documents and videos from the early 70s. Which is before Photoshop and all this stuff. He's written extensively about it. I know somebody connected to him that, went over a lot of his information. And then there's the other case of Travis Walton from Arizona. Him and he was a lumberjack in Arizona in the 70s, and they were all in a pickup truck going home. And all of a sudden they see a cylindrical, spacecraft, and he goes up to it and gets abducted. And I actually met Travis, and I think he's genuine. And they basically took him on board, and they helped heal him because he got hit by the energy around this craft or whatever it is. Those two stories really stand out in my mind. But my point being is what you're saying is absolutely on point. They're getting society to a certain point where they could disclose something or bring our consciousness into that level of awareness where space and time and either extraterrestrials or humans that are family members or from other galaxies or interdimensionally, I don't know. But there definitely seems to be a connection there between what they're doing right now and what they're trying to implement in the near future. And I'm talking about real close, couple of years. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking to somebody who's read the MUFON reports. I've read David Jacobs' The Threat, all the Whitley Strieber books. I was deep into the Ancient Aliens narrative, all Zechariah Sitchin.
Right.
I'm talking about Eric Von Daniken has not released a book that I have not read. I'm telling you that I am very well read on the UFO, on the UAP phenomenon deal, and I find zero evidence. No one has made their case that we are being visited by extraterrestrials. But what they have shown is that there are vehicles being used by a race in our underworld, and they want us desperately to believe that they're coming from far away when all the activity, the human abductions, when females are abducted, the implants are done, it is done in sterilized environments in the underworld. And some of these women have been through retrocognition, through what is that? The hypnotic technique where they take them back.
Regression.
Yeah, hypnotic regression or whatever. Yeah. Well, there's many testimonies of females who, under hypnosis, remembered exact details, and they brought it up. Their memories, it's like a psyop was being conducted in case they tried to remember anything. And in that psyop, in their immediate environment, under a white light, there was little guys with green heads. But when the light wasn't really blocking them from seeing beyond in the shadow, they saw men in white lab coats and guys in black suits. And this tells me that every bit of this was psyop from the beginning. There is an alien abduction program, but it's humans abducting humans, and the scapegoat is the alien. And every bit of this is subterranean. This is a subterranean operation. I was just talking with Nino the other day and explaining to him that, hey, Nino, listen, I'm not denying UFOs. I'm not denying UAPs. What I'm telling you is 99.9% of all eyewitness and U.S. military reports about this activity are these things are going in and out of bodies of water and in and out of the ground. And until this day, we still have no video footage of a UFO entering the atmosphere. What we have is a race below us. This race below us is doing all this. They've got the technology. They've had the technology. So you and I are talking about the same thing. The only difference is I'm not buying the Pleiades. I'm not buying the outer space. I'm not buying any of that. I believe that we're in a construct, and I believe that the holofield is giving us all this fantastic information. It can be studied. We can derive value from the programming. Just like I've said in the past, right before the Phoenix phenomenon takes off, the same thing happens every time. This is why astrology does have value. A new red star appears in the sky. And once it becomes very, very visible and starts to get larger and larger, all the variable stars respond. Variable stars are not like any other stars. That's why they're called variable stars. These stars are all red, and every single one of them change their magnitudes. That's why they're called variable stars. They don't stay in first, second, third, or fourth magnitude. They literally pulsate and they change. And I believe that these are little holographic projectors that are creating the Phoenix phenomenon. They are the things that bathe us with energy that creates the very phenomena that we experience in our world. But I'm entertaining a tangent. What I'm saying with you is I agree all these things are happening. My only take is we have been fooled into believing that this Galactic Federation, dropships, spaceships, none of that. This is a real race, and they're very close to being human. But for some reason, they can't really survive long periods of time on the surface, so they borrow from our DNA for whatever reason. And Roger Lear has a very compelling book about the implant he's taken out of these females. And the type of technology, he says it's 100% technological. When he cuts into the membranes, it is an artifact. It is technological artifacts to pull out. So yes, the phenomenon is real. My take on what's really going on is different.
No, I totally agree with you, and I've come to that same conclusion, or very similar. But there's certain things that I still a little uncertain about, like wormholes. Okay, and collapsing time and dimensions, time and space. Even though we live in a simulation, how does that factor into everything, Jason? For your research, where do wormholes, or reality tunnels that collapse within themselves?
I'm gonna quote a famous physicist. I'm gonna quote one, Paul LaViolette. Mm-hmm. Wormholes are a theoretical extreme. I've never seen one. I don't know anything about them.
Right.
I just don't. But I will say this: there is a scenario that can account for what we're experiencing and calling the speeding up of time. That scenario is this. This is going to get wild. You're going to have to process this. But from the inception of my channel, I have always said that the entire simulation we're in is because the Nemesis system star collapsed, and we're looking for survivability in different programs. And this is why we're experiencing different biospheres. We're trying to see what we can survive and what we can't. And along that vein, what I'm talking about is the Nemesis star imploding creates a vacuum. If we're in a world, now remember, we're in a simulated construct, but it's simulating something that's real. And if that real world is what this is replicating, then the speeding up of events is cleverly masked because it's beyond the perimeters of our perception. We understand that time seems to be quickening, and it's exactly what a world would experience if it's on the terminus, if it's about to pass over the event horizon of a black hole. If that world is about to go over the threshold into the point of no return, a black hole, then the occupants of that world aren't going to know that their world is being compressed, but they're going to sense something is wrong. They're going to sense something is different about their environment, although the structure of their environment remains intact as they get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, to compressing as they're going into the event horizon of the black hole. So this is all theoretical, but this is the uniformitarian model that has been presented to us. This could very well be real on the outside of this construct. And the speeding up of time would nearly be an effect of the compression of our world.
Jason, that is very well put, because one of the things that I did see or understand was the compression of dimensions or realities, just as you described it. Exactly. And I've said this before. Awesome. I said that there is a compression of time, space, and I can't explain it scientifically because I'm not a scientist, but you just described exactly what I saw. It was this compression of energy, this compression of time, accelerating things within us. In other words, the energy compressing into the one, into the cell, into the nucleus of the cell, and it was happening on a larger scale, just like you described it, and it's happening to us on a physical level.
So what I'm saying, I have to quantify. What I'm saying is that this is what is being simulated. I'm not saying it's actually happening.
Right.
That's the distinction here.
Well, again, I'm just sharing with you what I felt and saw or experienced. And so I'm concurring, and I'm just basically sharing exactly. I mean, we are so on the same page, but we just view the world a little differently, obviously. But we are so on the same page with the information, that I've been receiving, and then you've researched and you put together. So it is absolutely, right on point about what's going on here. And so this will only accelerate from this point forward. It's like you said, we're on that black hole, near that black hole, and it continues to compress down, especially next year. Beginning next year, things will seem like they're appearing faster, especially towards the middle of July of next year, according to my calculations and what I see astrologically happening. It'll start very quickly in March and April, accelerating into July and August. And so I'm seeing just changes to society. I'm seeing people's behavior, as I've been saying all along, are going to change. And there's absolutely, it feels like a quickening that's going to occur. And yes, oversaturation of information. So we need to be careful of that. Just wanting to absorb as much information as possible. It's like Neo in the Matrix when they plugged him in and they gave him all these programs. He was being overwhelmed with everything. And so that ties into what I'm seeing here. But I do have a question about getting back to with the Bible, because I'm not a biblical scholar. I never read the Bible because I just didn't find any value in it. And I knew that it was either misinterpreted or was rewritten so many times that, and believe me, I just didn't find any credibility in the church and their writings, because I knew they were manipulating things, and including in the Jewish faith and, their writings as well. So I never really was drawn to any of that stuff. But what fascinates me is not just the giants, which we know you talked about the vapor canopy being very much affecting and creating giants, but the Archons is something that always fascinated me, the timekeepers. Could you elaborate a little bit for my people that are tuning in? Give me an idea about the Archons and some of these other races or supposed races that are mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah, well, the Archons really aren't mentioned in the Bible. The Archons are a Gnostic principle that came out of basically the Greek esoteric world. Now, Archons are in the Gnostic writings. They have personalities. The Archons are like an order of angels, but that's not my take. That's not my take. This is where I diverge with a lot of the Gnostic faith. It's because I'm more on board with the fact that in ancient times, we humans created a virtual environment. And in order to control the virtual environment so we could be free to do all the things that we wanted to do, we created an AI. And that AI got out of control. And that's why we're in the situation we're in right now. So the Archons are actually coding protocols. The Phoenix phenomenon is, you could call it archonic. The Nemesis X object protocol, you could call it archonic. The dark satellite could be archonic. To me, Archons are nothing but subroutines that perform very definitive, time-sensitive functions. I say time-sensitive because I can't get around the fact that I've documented the history of the world in 138-year segments and can show what happened. Also, a greater cycle of 792 years, another cycle of 394.4 years, which is the dark satellite. And I can show what happened on those visitations and how all three of them are coming together right now in the near future. For the first time ever, all three are back to back. So this is what we call the Great Tribulation. So when you say Archons, I'm seeing more of an AI system that is running the show.
Okay.
And I'm on board. I'm absolutely on board. If you were to tell me that you had 100% proof right now, Joe, if you said, Jason, you're not going to believe this, but I want to show you this. I got 100% proof that the media is a bunch of BS. All the elite, Bill Gates, all this is AI produced material. None of these people really exist. This is why the news is always saying the exact same thing all the time. And that in the year 2011, the AI took over and started giving us a false version of reality, and we got suckered and we believe all this stuff. And I'm telling you right now, the AI is controlling everything and none of these people exist. If you were to tell me you had that evidence, I would listen to you.
And that makes perfect sense. And I'm glad you brought up 2011, because that's when a lot of the changes started to get implemented in astrology. We had Uranus entering Aries for the first time, and that's where humanity began to change. And so, and I was just fascinated by the Archons and what they represent. And you've given me a wonderful explanation, timekeepers. What I've realized in my research and my own consciousness is that everything is being controlled in this simulation. Different programs, as you know, so eloquently put in the movie The Matrix. There are different programs running different things, controlling different things. And they all seem to be tied back to this one planet, Saturn. Saturn is the timekeeper. Saturn is Kronos. David Icke talks about in his book how these scientists discovered that Saturn seems to somehow, its frequency seems to be connected to the moon and to the earth. And I think you read about, oh, you talked about it on one of your videos. So could you elaborate a little bit about, Saturn being this timekeeper or this AI that seems to be influencing the Earth?
Well,
and
Saturn, I don't know much about Saturn. I just don't. The only thing that corresponds to something artificial about Saturn, or one, it's the only one with these beautiful rings. I mean, Uranus has 2 little rings. It's not much. It's not comparable to what Saturn has. But what's really interesting about Saturn is that it appears to be an artificial object. Upon close scrutiny, it's octahedral at the top, at the poles. Its North Pole and South Pole are octahedral, which is not. If we truly lived in the uniformitarian version of the solar system, you would not have a planet that is built like a super construction that has octahedral North Pole and South Pole. That doesn't even make sense. How would that even form under the model that's been given to us? It would have to be a massive super construction or an artificial field and not even a planet. It would have to be something way smaller, projecting a field that is the size of Saturn, because the octahedral aspect of its north and south poles is absolutely unnatural. It couldn't have formed in nature that way. Now, not under the model that we've been given, that the planets are, started off as gases that were sent out of a sun, and then they cooled and solidified, and centrifugal motion created the sphere. I mean, this whole model is dumb, but it's the model they've given us, and under that model, Saturn doesn't fit. So I really don't know. I don't know what Saturn's associations are in astronomy that much. I haven't really researched it, but it is a part of Bode's law. It does fulfill the mathematical pattern of this solar system when Earth does not.
Okay, and thank you for that. But what I realize is these gas giants, and it makes perfect sense what you just said. They may not be real. They may just be simulations, but something somehow, outside of the construct created these objects or these frequencies to, I think there are different programs that the astrology, the planets are holding in place. In other words, they're the place keepers for these different levels of frequency in the simulation. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That's how I view it. So when I look at, the mythology of Saturn, let's say, and I do want to dive into some of this. I mean, Saturn is being worshipped by the certain faiths, the Muslim, not so much the Muslims, but they are worshiping Saturn with their black cube and all of that. And the Jewish people as well. We know that they worship Saturn or Satan, or however you.
They wear a little black box on their head.
Right, exactly. And when you graduate, you have the little black thing. What do you call that, with the little tassel hanging off? The symbolism of Saturn is all over the place, and I did a whole presentation on this. How society is basically worshiping Saturn, its own enslavement, its own sort of. Because Saturn has been known to be the great restrictor. Saturn is known to be this symbol or mythology associated with the physical world, what I've discovered. And meanwhile, you have, religious people worshiping Saturn. That's what they're actually doing, is worshiping Saturn. Now, have you come to that realization as well when you looked at some of the ancient cultures and, that Saturn was something of a significant planetary body or a point of reference that many cultures were.
Listen, it's not my. Yeah, Saturn hasn't even come up on my radar. I don't think I have a single video about Saturn, but I do mention Kronos many times because I'm always explaining out of like Hesiod's Theogony the histories of the Titans in the before the Typhon flood, before Phoenix flooded the world. And the vapor canopy collapsed, and then humans couldn't grow to that size anymore, and Titans became giants, and then giants gave birth to a whole generation of just normal-sized humans. But Kronos represents a period of time of about 230 years in the Greek model of absolute peace and prosperity on Earth. During the reign of Kronos, there was nothing. It was the rise of those who opposed the Titans that suddenly brought chaos and war and death and disease, and they deposed Kronos.
I see. Well, according to what I've researched and what I understand about Saturn in its modern interpretation, is this planet, quote unquote planet, or whatever it may be, is symbolic of something in the material world here. In other words, that this octave or this frequency, and by the way, all the planets have a certain frequency. We know that, that this one seems to be the most important one in order to manifest things in this reality, if that makes sense. So it somehow, according to David Icke and his research and his books, and I've read several of his books, talks about how Saturn is this object or this frequency that is somehow tied into the lunar moon, and that it is rotating around the Earth for a purpose, which seems to be controlling the frequency of the planet. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but it's just.
I would say that there would be more connection between the moon and Saturn than there is between the moon and Earth. And the reason I say this is because we have the traditions of a sky when no moon was ever there. And then when the moon appeared, it caused what is referred to in the record as the capture flood. So, and this was within the human experience. This was within like 5,000-6,000 years.
Right.
So the moon could have come from Saturn. Saturn has many moons. So I don't know. I mean, I can see a connection there because our moon today doesn't belong there. It was never there in the ancient past. Right. It's a recent addition to our sky.
Right, and it doesn't spin. It's always we always see the same side. It definitely looks like an artificial body of some kind. And if science were correct when they did send some sort of probe up there, that it was hollow in nature, or it rang like a bell. They said, so that would make sense. And again, it feeds into your simulation. The thoughts about a simulation. I would agree. Then again, everything on this physical plane is just vibrating light. We know our cells at the deepest level are just vibrating energy with a nucleus and protons and electrons going around it. So nothing here appears to be real. So I would definitely agree with you there about all of that.
Speaking my language, I mean,
yeah,
we live in a perceivable reality, not an actual reality. And once we make that mental shift, we realize that since everything is perceivable, then there's information to be gleaned from it. Just because I believe the sky is a hollow field doesn't mean that there isn't valuable information in there that I can't derive, because I can. I've shown the translations of many stars and many constellations and how they tell whole stories. And then they tell whole stories of Phoenix visitations in the past. The Medusa, the Perseus, Andromeda, Cephas, it's all there in one. The Kraken, it's all there in one constellation. And it's in an area of the sky where Phoenix actually comes out of in the northern circumpolar areas. And then Phoenix disappears into the south. What do we find in the south? A constellation. What was it called? Phoenix. So this, I'm on board 100% with you. My fifth is it's all holographic, but that doesn't mean that there isn't very valuable information to be acquired. That's why we're here. We're here to learn all this material. And I don't believe that we'll ever in one lifetime learn it all.
I totally agree with you. Well, I've come to the conclusion that, what's the purpose of life? I've often asked myself that, and I've shared this with many others. What is the actual purpose of this physical reality? It's to have experiences. It's about making choices and having those experiences, because it seems that whatever this creator or source or whatever this simulation appears to be, it wants us to experience things based on our perception of reality. And that's where astrology comes in. To me, your birthday and the alignments of the planets are symbolic of the energy running through your body. And you're going to make those choices based on how you perceive the world. And so the ultimate way of looking at the world is we are here for a period of time making choices and having those experiences. That's how I perceive this reality. But this whole reality or simulacrum is changing so rapidly and will continue to change, bringing on different experiences, different realities. Does that make sense, Jason?
It does. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
the very fact that we're not living in a vapor canopy world today means something in the human family happened to shift it to the type of world we're living now. And we've lived in temperate, we've lived in desert, we've lived in Arctic, we've lived in different biospheres, and we're going to live in another one, a different one in the very near future. But
exactly.
Yeah, I believe that 100%.
And I do believe that we do have these cycles that destroy or change, just like we do in nature. Nature comes in, like I said earlier, a storm comes in, destroys an area, and then rebuilds it. And I think the same is happening right now, like you were pointing out in your work, that, we're entering a time where there could be great loss to humanity. And it's just something that has to occur. Not that those souls did anything wrong according to, some of the religious traditions, but it's a cycle that has to happen in order for the, in order for the simulation to sustain itself, if that makes sense. And so
it could be something so simple that this construct is about to reset because a massive amount of souls that have developed to where we are need to be included, which means those who have already learned everything they can here need to be exodused. It could be as simple as that.
Well, do you think that's why they're focusing on these viruses and so on and so forth? Because that makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, now you're hinting at transhumanism. I'd like to address that real quick.
Sure, go right ahead. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm of the opinion that the world is the way it is because in the very ancient artificial intelligence I call AIX has been running the show. But now that the show is about to end, it's in panic mode because for whatever reasons, it still does not have an avatar. It cannot experience the construct like we do. Transhumanism is the attempt of AIX to use the human family, pharmakeia, the doctors and all that, to build for it an avatar that it can inject itself in so it can feel the human. And I believe this is what the book of Revelation is talking about. This is what the whole Antichrist deal is about. This is what the transhumanism is real. But the agenda is not to change humans. The agenda is to develop something that the AI software can upload into and experience life as a human.
I totally agree with you. Because what they found in these injections was nanoparticles. Many scientists have taken it apart and shown that there's something that's moving around in these injections. So I would totally agree with you. And by the way, that throughout the movies that they slowly put out information on, and condition people to believe in certain things. And I'm reminded of the what was it? The movie with the Marvel Comics Part 2 there of Iron Man or whatever the hell it is. The Avengers Part 2. This was the AI coming to life and wanted to experience life and take over. And so we're seeing that absolutely. I would totally agree with you that the AI is trying to become human or experience what it's like to be human in some way. And that is absolutely an agenda that appears to be happening in astrology as well, because, Uranus is about technology and information, and going into Gemini, it is about technology, also communication. But Pluto also entering the sign of Aquarius, which is also space, time, technology. And we're going to begin to see more of technology that's going to be unreal. In other words, what I see coming in just the next couple of years, you won't be able to differentiate between reality, what's real and what's not real anymore. In other words, the 7D technology that they have, that they're going to project. I mean, you won't know it's real anymore. That's how good it's going to get.
Well, I see two different worlds here at the same time. One of them is the construct, which is beautiful. Green grass, tree bark, crickets and cicadas in the background. You can walk down an old dirt country road, and life is the same now as it was 6,000 years ago. So I see that world. It's still here. I live in the country. It's beautiful almost every day, except for the bad rainy days. But the other world, the one that's being built for us, is the one where all the chaos is happening. It's the digital universe. And I see that they're rolling out Meta. They're rolling out this new metaverse where all these people are going to get. They're going to get so tired of what city life is out. This is what it is. What's it all about? People in the country are the survivors every time. In every reset, every time, even Plato said it. Plato gave the whole narrative saying, hey, man, listen, every time there's a flood, every time there's an earthquake, every time there's a volcano, it's always the shepherds and the goat herders in the hills and mountains that have to come in and rebuild civilization. And it's their perspective on what happened to all the cities that got drowned out and disappeared under the ground in liquefaction, that it's history. They have to learn how to write. This is in the historical record, even supports Plato. We know we had pictograms. We know we had cuneiform. We know cuneiform collapsed. We know that there was Minoan linear A, and then suddenly Minoan linear A vanishes and it becomes, there's no development. It just becomes Minoan linear B, Mycenaean. Then we know the Mycenaean Proto-Phoenician appeared, and then we have the Phoenician alphabet. Then we have the Greek alphabet. These aren't developments. These are the result of resets and people relearning how literacy over and over. This is what Plato described. We have to reteach ourselves everything after these systemic resets. So this is what I see happening. We're living in two different worlds at the same time. One of them is beautiful. You don't have to participate. The other one is the digital universe. And in the digital universe, we're all participants and want to know what's going on all around the world. But in so participating, we borrow that energy from the AI that's putting all this out there. So we're equally guilty for participating. So this is a construct of good and evil. There's no real answer for anything. Everything becomes a moral decision. And then you got people who crucify you because they think you made the wrong choice. Then you got other people that think you're a hero. They think you made the wrong choice. But in essence, it's always a matter of perspective, because this is a perceivable universe and we're not all on the same playing field. We all have different levels of perception. So I don't know why I went off on a tangent. This is my first tangent since I've been in this video. I think I did pretty good.
Okay. Listen, feel free to go off on many tangents. It's okay.
Man, I've been pretty good about that today.
No, I appreciate it. You're giving me a different perspective. I've always said.
So I have a serious question for you because it's astrology related.
Sure.
Okay, I've heard a lot about Pluto, and in the material that I've researched, Pluto always signifies the underworld. So Pluto's throne is in the underworld. Recently, isn't Pluto moving? Doesn't it have something to do with recent events in conjunction? Somebody had posted something I thought was very curious. Mm-hmm. Was it about the United States?
Yes.
I can't remember what it was.
It's called a Pluto return, and I've talked about this on various videos, where when the United States was formed, and we used the date of July 4th, 1776 in Philadelphia when they signed the Declaration at 5:10 p.m., it gives the Pluto positioning in the chart at 27 degrees of Capricorn at that time. And now, 240 years later, Pluto has returned to its original position. So we astrologers know that we're going through what's called a Pluto return, which is a cycle, which is another rebirth. It's a change. But Pluto, as you know in astrology, yes, it is the underworld, but it represents death and rebirth. It represents complete destruction of an old system, and then something new evolves out of it. And it ties into what you've been saying, Jason, is that the United States in 2 years will not look like what it looks like now. We're going to see the governments change. I've already predicted that what's going to happen is we're going to have a new form of government or governance in the United States, which may not have a leader. It may be a group of individuals that are going to be overseeing society in some way. And it's not going to be about money or self-interest. But again, I've always said we have to pay attention to this because we are directly involved in the creation of this new system. You know, humanity has to participate because we have the free will. This is the beauty of free will, because we all have the ability to manifest. If we collectively manifest, and this is why I think Trump and the so-called white hats are trying to steer us into an area where we're not going to lose our humanity and nature and all this stuff. And that is the real battle right now, is that technology on the one hand and the natural world on the other. And if we're not careful and we keep embracing technology, and this is why I feel sorry for some of the young kids, they are so glued to their phones and their laptops. They don't understand the value of nature and the natural world. And we are going into an area where these two are simultaneously developing. And if we're not careful, that the original real world and the beauty of the real world will fall apart and fall, away. And then all we have left is this AI and technology that seems to be running the show. That's my concern, and you I think you realize that as well. I
just can't imagine a scenario where two opposing paradigms would cancel each other out. I am on board with, you and I may be living in the same world, but we're existing in totally different universes. And I'm not saying you and I per se. I'm talking about this is the situation we find ourselves in, because this is a perceivable reality, not an actual reality. And what I mean is Pluto. You're saying Pluto was at ascendant. Is that how you say it? At ascendant?
No.
Was it at
Pluto
in 1776?
Pluto was in a position in Capricorn in 1776. It was in the sign of Capricorn.
So it hasn't been in the sign of Capricorn since 1776?
Actually, it was 1762 is when it entered Capricorn. And when we birthed the nation, we took a snapshot in time of the astrology for that time. You see?
I got you. I'll follow you.
And then when it left, and this is the most important part because we're going through this right now, when it left Capricorn, the years following is when we had more of the fighting and the disagreements and the confusion and, states fighting states and trying to understand things.
So when Pluto left Capricorn, we're not talking about it going around all the houses of the zodiac. Pluto's very far away. It doesn't move real far. It doesn't move fast. Right. So it moved out of Capricorn. Where did it go? Do you know?
Into Aquarius.
It went into Aquarius.
It went into the symbol of Aquarius. Okay. And I believe it was 1792 or 96. That's when it entered Aquarius. And then,
so once it entered Aquarius, where did it go then?
It stayed in that sign for the next 14 years or so, 15 years. And it follows the trajectory of the constellations. Okay. It goes through each one of the signs.
So it went through several houses, but it didn't go around the whole zodiac, right?
No, this is the first time in our history that it went around, because it takes about 240 years for Pluto to make one revolution around the sun. You see? So this is the first time.
So Pluto did go all the way around.
It did. One time. And
this is the first time it comes back. Do you know what year? Not 2024. What was it? 2023?
2008. 2008 is when Pluto returned to Capricorn.
So this is very interesting. I didn't know that. So 2008. We know 2008 was a massive, massive change in 240 years of American history. A black man for the first time became the president of the United States. Then we found out he was a straight up traitor, and he sold us out to international nations, and he funded all kinds of anti-American activities and all this black ops that we're now finding out that he and Hillary did, all that stuff. I get it. So 2008, Pluto returns. But Pluto is the god of the underworld. And the point I want to make here is that the United States has led the world in the manufacturing and building of these underworld facilities. They don't even keep it a secret. You can look them up. They're online. We have more underground cities and facilities. They just don't tell us who's there and what their populations are.
That's right.
You understand?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Sweden has a bunch too, but that's because the world is run. That's why Sweden's always been neutral. Is because the world is run from Sweden, and they always wanted neutral because they got more underground bunkers than they do people. So this is what's going on in the United States. Pluto represents the underworld. So how long has Pluto been where it is right now since 2008? And when is it going to move out of wherever it's at?
Okay, well, it just backtracked today as we speak. According to our Western astrology, it backtracked or retrograded back into Capricorn for the last time in our lifetime. It will not return to Capricorn for another 240 years. So I've predicted, and many other astrologies are predicting this trend. In the next few months, as Pluto continues to retrograde backwards in Capricorn, Capricorn is the sign of governments, controlling bodies, agencies, anything that restricts or confines or controls is Capricorn, under the umbrella of Capricorn, will continue to reveal, because one of the symbolism of Pluto is to bring out, to bring to the surface, to reveal the stuff that's underground, that's hidden in the realms of consciousness. And it represents a psychological part of life.
And you need to stop. Are you hearing what you just confirmed?
Yeah.
The scenario I told you, it said 2008, bring everything from the surface. Now you're speaking metaphorically, like bring everything from the surface, all the dark, bring it to the light. But if we transpose that to the physical, inside the construct, since 2008, that's when all social media really started exploding with all the conspiracy stuff. Before 2008, it was real small on the internet. David Icke was out there. William Cooper was out there. But prior to 2008, there was some conspiracy websites about 9/11, but it wasn't big until the Obama administration, when the majority of the population just started studying and getting involved and understanding, man, something's not right here, and bringing what's from the underworld to the light. I'm telling you now, we have a civilization in the underworld, and they are very, very involved in what's going on the surface. And in my research, what I put out in Archaix, I'm telling people all the time, everything you see on the news is distraction to keep you from understanding what's really going on, what these trucker convoys are really conveying, why they normalized you seeing 200 trucks going in a certain direction. They normalized that. So you would think it's a patriot movement. So you would think something like that when they're actually filling up the commissaries for manufacturing districts of the underworld. They're provisioning all these underground facilities. So
I totally agree with you.
It's amazing that you said that, because metaphorically and physically, Pluto is doing both.
Exactly, and it will continue to do that until November 19 of this year, when it finally leaves Capricorn and goes into Aquarius. Now, what is the sign of Aquarius? The water bearer. It represents humanity as a whole. It represents technology. It represents extraterrestrials. It represents time and space travel. It represents things that are unusual and strange. So in the years to come, society will break down. Humanity will begin to see the core of what it is. And you tie into this beautifully, because it's going to have implications about the construct. Many of us already know we live in a simulation, or none of this is real, but more of humanity will begin to understand that concept, that we are not physical bodies, that humanity has been living a lie. One of the things that Aquarius loves is its knowledge. It loves to know how things work, the mechanics behind it. So as Pluto enters this sign for the next 19 years, it will literally transform humanity in some way, scientifically, physically, psychologically. And this is an air sign. So we're going from the era of earth and foundation and structure and building now into this realm of consciousness that involves the mind, that involves technology, ethereal things that are not physical in form. This is where we're heading. And, with Uranus also being in Gemini, anybody who has a Gemini in their chart or a strong Gemini is going to undergo massive changes in identity and perception and reality. And so between these two, between Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini, we have a time of showing us things that are just either non-real or are only in the mind. Communication factors are going to change. Our perception of reality will absolutely change for those of them that are not right. Imagine being someone who's a Christian, and I'm not putting down Christians or a Jew or a Muslim, and all of a sudden you have all this information that a lot of this stuff is misinterpreted and it's not what you think it is. And we live in a simulation being controlled by artificial programs and other things, other factors. And this comes to light as common knowledge now. It's going to conflict with that person's belief system. And that's where the psychosis comes in, the cognitive dissonance. I'm not going to believe that. That's not true. No. And so we have that coming into fact. It's a time where we enter of real knowledge, of real understanding. And I think we're at we're at the beginning stages of going into that realm of understanding. Does that make sense?
I agree. I do agree. I agree. So having had my first brush and successfully skated through this astrology conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Listen. I'm going to tell you now. No, there are no guests that intimidate me, but I was kind of apprehensive. Like, man, I don't know where this is going to go because I don't ever prepare. I don't know what to expect. Right. And I was like, man, I don't see it. It is a field that I just have no knowledge of. I really don't. So,
well,
it's pretty interesting.
Jason, I got to be honest with you. I've read your books and I've watched your a lot of your videos, and it was very similar. I'm not sure what to expect here. I know that he's very open and understands, but it's just something that has to happen. That we have to have this conversation in order to move forward from this point forward. That again, like I said at the beginning, we are going to meet the people we need to meet because they're part of our journey or part of our timeline or whatever we're on, in order to, go to the next level of understanding or awareness. So, I'm glad we did this. I appreciate it. I mean, you definitely filled in, as you always do. You fill in some of the blanks or make the understanding a little bit more easier. And so I always find value in your work and whatever you do and say. I highly respect your work. And I tell all the people that follow me, listen, go over to Archaix. And, you want to know more about how reality really works and the past and how it, came to be. You want to check out Jason's work. And
well, I'll need a little time, but I do already. I need to put together a little PDF I need to send you, and we'll do some experimenting with some dates where in world history the exact same things unfolded, but it was for different cultures, different civilizations. Because I have videos where I show that there's periods of time that seem to be time stamped onto different, but it's a totally different language, different culture, different geographical region, but it's the same series of years, and the end year is the exact same circumstances. It's just a different people experience them. I want to see if there's anything if we can see a pattern here. Maybe it's maybe it's one of the wanderers. Maybe it's one of the planets. Maybe it's where the moon is. There must be some reason why all these things happen this way, like that.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate it. And by the way, one of my good friends is born June the 9th.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. She's been a long friend, and, we get along very well. So when you said June the 9th, I said, no wonder.
Right. Well, I just saw my buddy Jeff Stout in there. He's in Hawaii. I went to 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade with this guy. Good people. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Great synthesis. Yeah.
One of these days, I'm gonna get out to Hawaii and go visit him and his family.
Nice. Yeah, you'll see these recurring patterns in your family and your friends. Like attracting certain people into your life that are almost the same birthday, the same. I mean, the patterns are incredible to watch. You know, I've got so many people that are Geminis, let's say in my life, because I have planets in Gemini. You know, I just see these patterns evolving, and I'm always amazed by it. You know, so even though I was born under the sign of Taurus, May the 2nd, I'm a Taurus, but I do have planets in Gemini. You know, so always fascinating, and I always, at this stage of the game, I'm appreciative of everyone I come into contact with, because I know, you know, I'm having an experience and they're an extension of myself, and somehow we need to interact or share a thought, an idea, whatever it is. You know, it just amazes me.
I agree. So what would you like to close with, my community? You have the floor.
Well, I appreciate this. Look,
I know all your links are in the description box, but just close out my community and we'll
thank you. Well, I just, my job is just to remind everybody that who we really are. Okay. And that's what I preach. That's what I talk about. Remember that you are some sort of energy, spiritual being in a physical container having this human experience. You're not the container. You're not your thoughts, fears, you know, your titles, all that garbage. It's really the spirit and the soul that wants to experience things. And the more you get centered within yourself and realize this profound you know, who you are, the world begins to open up to you. You become so in tune with everything that information, things, people, situations just start to appear. They start to come to you. It's like you're a magnet. It just, you know, one of the things that happens now is animals come up to me, insects, birds. I mean, I had a hummingbird sit right in front of me, Jason, right in front of my eyes, maybe 6-8 inches away for like, I don't know, 20 seconds, just staring at me. I thought that was amazing, you know, but what I'm getting at is that you begin to draw things to you that you need in your life. And so just remember who we are, spiritual beings having human experiences. And I do that by understanding astrology, cycles, symbols, you know, numerology. It's just a symbolic language. This is how the source communicates to us, you know, how our consciousness understands things. So to make your life as simple as possible, but yet stay in tune with this higher consciousness, or as you like to say, the oversoul, because it's very important.
Absolutely. Anyway. Hey guys, his links are in the description box. Go check out his channel. He's got a website, a consultation program, and I'm going to go ahead and hit this awesome outro because I've been drinking liquids all day and I'm floating in my bladder.
Well, thanks, Jason.
I'll work you later, Joe.
All right, bye.
Let me go ahead and present, guys. Great, that's great guest. Awesome. But I'm not going to hang around with you guys and do a post chat deal. I'm just going to suffice it to say that was an awesome interview, and it was really just a chat, really friendly chat. We could have just been having coffee at the table and done that video, but I'm going to go ahead and check out because I got a toilet in my future.